Welcome to another special emergency edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, who I don't think he's slept in the last 24
Not a
hours. He's
lot.
sick. He's fighting NBA superstars on social media. We have so many. It's been a very eventful, not just for the league, but for you specifically, eventful 24 hours, Bill.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see how long the adrenaline rush can keep a human being moving. Answer is it's 24 hours so far.
We're going to find out. Later in the show, we'll do the latest on Jimmy Butler, who cannot stop being Jimmy Butler. Maybe we'll have a little conversation about Luka and the AD shocker. And also, we should note that LeBron James has come for one Bill Ryder, who will respond in kind on this show. That's been a fun development to watch over this last 24 hours. But first, another blockbuster trade just happened this evening. Bill, this is the one, had Luka and AD not happened last night, this is the one that would have blown everybody's minds. I just said blockbuster. I don't even know if we can still use that term after last night, but we'll use it. 3-team deal involving the Spurs, the Kings, and the Bulls. De'Aaron Fox gets to his preferred destination. He's going to go to San Antonio. The Kings land Zach LaVine, 3 first-round picks, and 3 seconds. Everybody in Dallas wondering right now, how can you get multiple picks for a player of stature? Evidently, you can. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then the Bulls, of course, get off of Zach LaVine. They land Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and they get their own first-round 2025 back. Bill, we can go through this individually here, but top-line takeaway for you on a move that we've all been waiting for.
Top line takeaway is this is the happy ending version of yesterday's trade. Yesterday's trade was amazing, but angst-ridden, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. I think, John, this is, as best we can sort of prognosticate in advance, really good for everybody. And this was, and you and I talked about this, and I'd written about sort of De'Aaron Fox in particular and what Rich Paul and Clutch Sports were aiming to do. What I had heard is that they wanted to give the Kings time. Other people, not me, had reported that the Spurs were his destination, but because of the way the CBA works, they wanted to be able to get the right return, as you and I talked about. For the Kings, right, to move on from Fox, they wanted win now pieces, compete now pieces, not just picks too, but they're in a position where their front office wants to continue to try to fight for the play-in or better, if you want to be an optimist in Sacramento, and that meant there had to be a third team involved. Zach LaVine's the guy that made the most sense, and so I think, as you noted, this is a trade that everybody wins. De'Aaron Fox gets to go to the Spurs, and they begin that sort of process of learning to play together earlier the better. I think in the years ahead, it's huge. I'm not sure Zach LaVine with the Kings is a real difference maker for Sacramento, but with Fox wanting to leave, they felt like obviously this was the return that then really so substantive picks, hopefully for them, come back. And you noted Chicago gets off the LaVine trade. So top line takeaway is, this is a much happier, I think, good, better vibes version of the craziness from yesterday that has me on no sleep.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention you and producer Aaron did a really good job with that. Just mind melter from last night. I was at dinner having a good time, and you two hopped on, did a long pod. If everybody caught that, great. If you missed it, you can find that in our podcast feed, and I encourage everybody to go check that out. You guys broke that down. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But for this trade, for tonight, I like this all the way around. I love this for the Spurs, who get the player that they want, and De'Aaron Fox gets to the location that he wants. I love this for the Kings, who got a useful piece in Zach LaVine, who's having a bounce-back year, plus 3 firsts, plus 3 seconds. LaVine gets a nice trade kicker in this as well. We'll talk about whether or not the Kings, can make the play-in. And then the Bulls also getting their 2025 first-round pick back and getting off of Zach LaVine. But let's start with the Spurs. That's the big one here, right? Because you and I and everybody else were like, hey, who are they going to pair with Wemby, and wouldn't it be great if it was De'Aaron Fox, slightly older, not exactly on the same timeline, 27, but young enough that this is going to work out for them. And also, the thing that I love about this for the Spurs, aside from the fact that De'Aaron Fox and Wemby should be gangbusters, a really dynamic duo next to each other.
That'd be awesome.
No Stephon Castle in this deal, Bill.
Yes,
they hold on to him.
Yeah, it's amazing. I said, so I was on CBS Sports HQ, and you were too. I think you were up, and then I was, or the other way around. And it might be that my brain is fried from the last 24 hours of NBA madness, and it might just be that I'm accidentally crazy, like a fox. But that's not even the expression. I'm so tired.
How much caffeine are you operating on right now?
A lot. There's a significant amount. There's a significant amount of Lavazza single cup pods flowing through my system. The thing about that I said is I think the biggest winner tonight is De'Aaron Fox. That's the winner. Because we all need everyone to be healthy, assuming that happens, and there's no reason to think that Wemby won't be over the course of his career. De'Aaron Fox is winning an NBA chip now. He's winning. He is winning. That's my bit. He's winning a title. I know you have to go through it. I know that the West is going to be really, really great. It's such a good fit. And for De'Aaron Fox, you're right. At a younger age, he gets time to sort of learn to play with Wembanyama. He gets to be maybe the veteran on that group as these young guys sort of like grow together and they bring in more. I love it for the Spurs, and I really like De'Aaron Fox. And he's a great. He is not a player that can win a championship on his own, but he is one of the kind of pieces that was always going to come into San Antonio and make them sort of level up. They needed a point guard to pair with Wembanyama. So for me, it's great for everyone. What a night for De'Aaron Fox to land there and play with Wembanyama going forward.
Huge night for De'Aaron Fox. Huge night for the Spurs. I love Stephon Castle. I think he's going to be a star. Takes pressure off of him. Now all of a sudden you've got your backcourt of the future already lined up.
Call.
Chris Paul gets to do the whole Professor Emeritus thing and coach him up a little bit longer this season before he rides off into the sunset. Really nice bit of business for the Spurs. You mentioned he's going to win. De'Aaron Fox is going to win an NBA championship. I love that you brought this up because I'm in a text chain with a bunch of NBA nerds who are my friends, right? They know what I do professionally. Obviously, they're my friends, but they like couldn't wait to talk about this thing. One of them, we're always like throwing out like long-term crazy bets with each other. And one of them immediately jumped into the chat and was like, hey, Spurs are going to win a championship in 5 years. And my response was no bet. And he then lowered it to 3 years to make it a little bit bolder. And I was like, maybe. So my question for you is one, how quickly does this advance their timeline? And now two, as we sit here and record this, they are what, 2 games out of the play-in?
2 out of the play-in, 3 out of the, I think, the 9 spot. Yeah. And Sacramento is the team they're chasing, by the way.
Yes.
Which is so interesting.
So let's do that. Let's do between these two because the Kings wanted to get a win now player. Zach LaVine's having a bounce back year. Which way are you leaning this season, Spurs or Kings, if you had to like place a bet on one of them advancing?
Spurs, counterintuitively, I'm going to tell you why. I think there are so many levels to the trades that have happened, right? Luka, AD, and the one we're talking about. And you could sort of peel off one level and talk about it for an hour. I want to give you one and answer your question. I'll try to go really quickly. One of the truisms of the NBA is stars have paired together a lot, really not starting with, but maybe sort of starting with LeBron and Bosh and Way, where sort of player empowerment, maybe it was a Celtics team, where you just sort of pair together is, for the most part, Celtics notwithstanding, it takes time for these guys to figure out how to play together. That was true in Brooklyn. It never really worked. You sort of go down the list of superstars. And so when you pair guys together, there's a learning curve. If you're the Lakers, the rush isn't huge, right? Because you're building around Doncic. He's there forever. We can talk about this later. If you're the Spurs, like, it'd be great if you made the play in this year, but I don't think there's a lot of pressure. It's just excitement. And hey, whatever it takes these guys, Fox and Wemby, to figure it out, be great if it's this year. But this is really about a 3-year, a 4-year, a 5-year timeline. There is pressure for the Kings to win now. And it's not pressure that even if it works perfectly between DeRozan and LaVine and the other guys in that roster, Sabonis, there's for me not a huge ceiling, and it's hard for like a new guy to come in. And I know DeRozan and LaVine have played together, so maybe that speeds up the process. Their time in Chicago,
West.
But here's the thing: Chicago is the worst run, maybe one of the teams in America. The fact they're maybe accidentally and purpose rebuilding, maybe they can move up the rankings a little bit. Chicago West with a front office that at least, not that the Kings cover themselves in glory all the time, but this is a better team. It's a better team.
How bad do you have to be where people are like, you know what, the Kings front office?
I said it on HQ, and I was like, it feels so dirty out of my mouth.
But you know what? We have taken a lot of pot shots at the Kings. I like this trade for the Kings, not just the Zach LaVine component. He has played with DeMar DeRozan before. I think that the Spurs fit with De'Aaron Fox is just cleaner. It just makes more sense, right? Basketball perspective, you're going to run that 2-man pick and roll game with him and Wemby all day long forever. They're going to be amazing. The Kings thing, a little bit clunkier with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. They had diminishing returns there. It started out when they first paired them together, like pretty gangbusters, and then like they just came back to the pack a little bit. But look, Domantas Sabonis is a really good player. Keegan Murray, I still believe in. Keon Ellis. They have some good pieces there.
They do.
The thing with this is, what I like most about the trade is it's a little bit 1 foot in, 1 foot out, where the Kings say they wanted a win now player, but they also got some really tasty picks. They got the 2025 Hornets, this year's Hornets pick. They've got a Spurs pick in 2027 that now probably doesn't project to be that great, probably back in the round. And then that 2031 Wolves pick that the Spurs picked up for the Rob Dillingham move, who knows what happens with the Wolves moving forward, right? I like that pick a lot. That's 3 picks and 3 more seconds where you go, okay, Zach LaVine, we're gonna have to pay him. We'll see what happens. Maybe we're relevant. Maybe we're in the play-in. But oh, by the way, we've like restacked our coffers. Hey, the Kings made a competent trade. Congratulations.
And it's such a great point. And I'm going to stack on top of that little love coming for Rich Paul. That's my guy right now. Sarcasm. I got no Rich Paul problem, but the other way around might be different.
Sure.
Rich Paul's Fox's agent. Credit to, it's really De'Aaron Fox, but Paul's his agent. Credit to those guys for giving the Kings, there's a lot of reasons for this. Some are self-interested, but the runway to get the right deal. And obviously the Spurs were able to get it done, involve Chicago. And because the CBA limits how many teams can go get certain contracts, and because it's harder to dictate one team or a guy's going to go to a single place, right? That's not the same reality as it was. De'Aaron Fox wants to go to the Spurs. He is different than 3 years ago, which I think would have been Fox will go to the Spurs. All of that meant that there was a little more leverage for Sacramento, and the Spurs had to give up a lot. And so credit, I think, to Fox for leaving that organization somewhat graciously and gracefully, and some of it was, I think, required. But it's, I hope this is a picture of the new NBA, the idiocy we'll talk later about what the Mavs did, that maybe if you can't hold on to one of your guys in the smaller market, and the Spurs are a small market too, but they have Wemby, so that becomes a glamour market, maybe this is a sign in this new CBA as we try to figure out what the hell it all means, that you can actually get some kind of return if you know what you're doing, or as you noted, the Kings kind of know what you're doing. That makes sense, and that creates a little more balance in the league.
The Kings listened to De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox decided that he wanted to move on, and the Kings looked around. Okay, you want to get to the Spurs? Let's see what we can offer Spurs. As you and I talked about earlier in the week, we're set up with just so many draft picks, and I thought for sure they were going to have to throw in Stephon Castle or maybe Devin Vassell, and that's another one. We didn't even mention Devin Vassell.
Vassell's still that there. Is interesting.
This is a great piece of business for the Spurs. Really smart, good piece of business for the Kings in a sticky situation. I think everybody wins here, even the Bulls, who frequently do not win. Congratulations.
I was going to say, do we have to say nice things about Chicago too? Because I know I haven't slept in 24 hours, but I feel something feels off.
They got their own first-round pick back.
They did good.
First-round pick, so congratulations to them. We're going to take a quick timeout, then we're going to continue with this conversation about what would have been the biggest trade at this trade deadline between the Spurs, the Kings, and the Bulls. Then we're going to talk about the other one that is the all-time biggest shocking trade with Luka and AD. We're going to discuss a little bit of Jimmy Butler. All that's coming up on the other side. Don't go anywhere. This is Beyond the Arc.
Gives it to Jenkins for the championship. A 16 beats a 1. From sweet to elite to the Final Four.
All right, welcome back to a special trade deadline Beyond the Arc. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, leave a review. If you're listening on Spotify, you can leave us a comment on this episode. Just look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode. All right, getting back to this one, Bill, before we move on to Luka and AD and all that madness. The Bulls finally unplugged Zach LaVine. They get their own 2025 first-round pick back. Vooch has to be next, right?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a full teardown. By the way, I don't know if you saw the show yesterday, but I didn't have enough water. So this time my wife had to keep bringing me water, and people in the chat were like, is this guy okay?
We're going to get you an IV. We're going to plug you in. You're going to make sure that you're hydrated, and it's going to be fantastic.
So
you know who could use a center now that they don't have any is the Lakers.
Oh my dude. Oh yeah. It's do you want to get into this? Do you want to get into the
let's
LA?
do it. I cannot wait to talk about this with you. Let's do it.
All right. So I mean, you start us off because I'm obviously a lot.
For me, last night, like everybody else, most shocking trade in NBA history. I think the more I've had time
100%.
to process this, look, the Lakers are an attractive destination. They've got their star of the present and one of the greatest, if not the greatest players of all time. But now they've got their star of the future lined up. And for the people trying to spin on the Mavs' behalf about Luka Doncic being injury prone, he's about to be 26 years old. He hasn't had, the greatest diet and health routines. Fine. He's one of 3 players in NBA history to make 5 straight first team All NBA. He's an unbelievable player. His defense isn't that great. He's the star of the Los Angeles Lakers for the next 10 years. The Lakers picked up the phone and what? You want to trade who? Yes, absolutely. Take whatever you want. For the Mavs not to get more than one first-round pick, for them not to get Austin Reaves, for them not to even to get Dalton Connect, just not a great move by the Mavs for me. And what it is, Bill, is them looking at Luka and saying, we don't think he's going to be worth the 5-year, $345 million supermax that he was in line for this offseason. So we're just going to get out of the Luka business, which I think was a mistake.
Look, so if that is the actual, I don't know it's true. And by the way, to your point, underscoring what I think how poorly this was handled by the Mavs, if you take Nico Harrison at his word that he only called the Lakers and it was his decision and Luka never came to him,
and why?
Which, by the way, counters what I've heard from a lot of people, but there's a lot of contradictory reporting, then that is utter malpractice. And our colleague Sam Quinn did a pretty good story. There's a lot of good content at CBSSports.com right now. What he thought the return, the sort of a possible packages would have been. Here's the thing. So what I have heard in the last 24 hours, some conflicting things, but I've certainly talked to people that I trust who are convinced, who believe, who have told me that Luka had told that it was understood, communicated some way by Luka or his agent, Bill Duffy, that Luka wasn't signing the Supermax extension and that Luka would not be around after 2026 when he has a player option summer of 26, and that would be his call. That makes more sense to me than the GM of the Mavs in his press conference where he said, I did this, I made the decision. Now, if you watch the press conference, there's some weird moments where he talks about, it was going to be a tumultuous summer and Luka was going to have options. And the reporters were sort of saying what even the press conference doesn't convince me that what Nico was saying is legitimate. So, John, maybe you're right. And certainly people have said this and reported that maybe they just didn't believe in Luka and want him there. And I've certainly heard that. I'm not quite buying it yet because if you don't think Luka Doncic at 25 is a supermax player, and in combination with that, or you do not, when you decide you don't want him, shop him and get a bidding war, that is incompetence and basketball malpractice. So this doesn't add up to me.
It doesn't add up to me either because, all right, first of all, from the Luka perspective, if they thought that Luka was going to walk, nobody turns down the richest contract in NBA history. We're talking about many tens of millions of dollars that he left, that he would have left if it was his decision on the table. He goes from a supermax 5-year, $345 million contract that would have been the richest in NBA history to now with the Lakers, they can offer him 4 for $229 this summer, or he can do a shorter contract, 3 for $165 with a player option as a bridge to the next richest contract. Again, as you mentioned, a lot of really good content on CBSSports.com. Our guy Sam Quinn broke down all the different contract options now for Luka moving forward. I just have a hard time believing that if the Mavs hadn't traded him, that he would have passed up that supermax. Very hard for me to believe. To your point about not shopping him, what happened there? I don't get at all. If you're Nico Harrison and you wake up one morning and you're like, you know what, we've had enough. Like, and there's all these rumblings. There's been different reports about, they were ticked off about his defense in the playoffs last year, and the calf strain, and he doesn't take care of his body, and he was pushing
conditioning,
here,
his weight,
his conditioning, and the way he eats, and like, hey, we've had enough. Okay, if that's the conclusion you reach, you wake up, you've had enough. Every team in the league is on board with talking to you. Every team.
Well, what would the Spurs give you? Everything. Or the Rockets.
Yes, exactly right. Every team in the league is going to wake up and say to you, we're in the Luka business. Here's our best offer. You identify Anthony Davis. You love Anthony Davis. You think defense wins championships. You got a center, blah, blah, blah.
Don't buy it.
I'll part to the side for a second. I love Anthony Davis. He's an all-NBA player. He's an all-defense player. He's a Hall of Famer. You got to get more. That's not enough.
No, and get in the weeds a little bit here. Those Lakers picks, of which the Mavericks only got one of the two, by the way, were highly coveted, John, as you know, because the presumption was they're going to use these picks if they trade them to go all in now and put the chips on the table and with LeBron and AD, and therefore when it all comes to an end, they're going to be total garbage, and those picks will likely be valuable. Luka Doncic is going to be there when those picks matriculate, and they're probably going to be able to put something around him. And those picks aren't – for that first-round pick, and they only got one, isn't even as valuable as it would have been had they made a move, including it, that would have brought back a short-term, sort of small window return. Luka being a Laker makes the picks not very valuable. That's why I don't believe, and I have a little reporting, but I'm not sure, I do not believe that this was anything other than, at least in part, Luka Doncic not wanting to be there, wanting to be a Laker. And I hear you on the Supermax and just saying that's the only place I'm going, because if that's true, you can't trade him anywhere else because they'll just tell that team the same thing. And maybe, John, it's one of these ugly divorces where Luka wanted to be a Laker and kind of told him, and Dallas was over him, and whoever communicated what first, it was just F you, because it doesn't make sense what happened.
None of it makes sense, and there's got to be more reporting. There's got to be more to it. We're going to find out, I'm sure, as we start to pull on the thread a little bit exactly what happened here. But it has left everybody in the league who follows this, and you and I and other media outlets, everybody who follows this extremely closely. We do this for a living. Bill's got 2 things of water. He hasn't been to bed in 24 hours. There are no answers here. There are just bigger questions. The only answer here, at least from the Lakers' perspective, is thank you, Dallas Mavericks, for setting us up for the foreseeable future. I can't believe you've actually done this. But for everybody else, especially on the Mavericks side, it is completely befuddling and bewildering. I don't know that we'll ever be able to look at this and go, man, okay, now we understand what happened from the Mavs side.
This is also a few sort of from the Dallas side. I have a lot of Lakers thoughts too, and we get to it. One, this is the GM who didn't understand the value of Brunson properly, and now is the guy that got rid of this dude. I mean, you're in a position where you can be the worst GM or make the worst decisions in a small cycle in the history of the sport, and two, Mark Cuban's no longer in power. Like, this answers any, because when Cuban sold the team, remember, Cuban was the beating heart of that team, obviously, and was the majority owner, was the guy that sort of was in charge and, bigger than life. And December 2023, I think is when that sale happened or was about to go through, and he became the minority owner. And we were told, and I think you and I discussed it on the pod, he's still going to be the guy in basketball operations. I'm going to be in charge. This is the guy that Mark Cuban, Luka Doncic, once said, if I had to choose between letting Luka go somewhere else and divorce, I'll be in the lawyer's office divorcing my wife. And went on local, so good. He went on local Dallas radio. What is today? Sunday? Today, I'm still turned around, and said I had nothing to do with it. So I see where it gets lost in the shuffle for good reason, but the Mark Cuban era is over. It's dead in Dallas. This shockwave has revealed that.
Yeah, absolutely. Indefensible, as you can see for everybody joining us on YouTube right now. The comment from Nicholas here, there's no way you can justify the Luka trade for the Mavericks unless he never plays basketball again. It's a terrible trade for the Mavericks. I think that's most people's takeaway. I want to thank everybody, by the way, who's joining us live on YouTube right now. You can find us at Beyond the Arc CBS when we're live on YouTube. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, as Nicholas just did. As we get more comments, we'll throw them up on the screen. Subscribe to the show and the little bell symbol there. It's going to be really key this week as the trade deadline approaches.
Yeah,
click on that little bell symbol. You'll get notified when we go live. We're live Monday through Friday most days at noon Eastern. And then we do special shows like this one as it warrants. And then we're going to have another one this week when the Cavs and the Celtics have their rematch on Tuesday night. So a lot of content from Beyond the Arc. We're going to take another quick break. We're going to continue with the conversation about the Luka trade to the Lakers, what that does to the Mavs and their championship odds, the Lakers championship odds. And then again, I cannot wait to discuss this with you. Bill versus LeBron James is a thing that is happening on social media. We'll tell you all about that on the other side. Don't go anywhere. This is Beyond the Arc.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more. It's Gareth Bale. Ronaldo. Wonderful goal. On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. As you mentioned, Nico Harrison gave a comment to Tim McMahon of ESPN saying that I believe that defense wins championships. I believe that getting an all-defensive center, a guy, by the way, I'm just pausing here. This is not what Nico said, who keeps saying he doesn't want to play center. And an all-NBA player with a defensive mindset gives us a better chance. We're built to win now and in the future. I don't believe you, Nico. I'm sorry. I don't believe you. But, Bill, let's just talk about whether or not the Mavs are actually contenders now. Their championship odds, the championship odds before the finals, to win the finals before this trade, plus 2,500, and to win the Western Conference, plus 900. That actually decreases. Now they're plus 4,000 to win it all, and plus 1,600 to win the Western Conference. What does this do for their basketball this season?
25 to 1 to 40 to 1. I'm with you on Nico. I hope Nico's lying to us because he got put in an untenable position rather than telling us that he's incompetent. Because it's one of the
he made competent trades last year. I can't believe
he did. He did
at the trade deadline.
Oh, can I give you one more? Sorry to interrupt you. One more thing I've thought about, but I haven't been able to vet because ownership level's harder. There are new owners. He works for
Yeah.
them. He doesn't work for Cuban. So in like a small, those of you watching, sliver of maybe this guy has bosses who don't want to pay the money or didn't like Luka, or there is a world where this is dictated from on high. I don't have anything to go on. It just nothing makes sense to me. To answer your question, 25-1 to 40-1 is right. They're not good enough. They're just. I love Anthony Davis. No, that's not true. I like Anthony Davis. He is not capable of being the best player on an NBA championship team. As the guy, he can be 2 or 3 times in a 7-game series if things go really well and he gets 5 months off because of COVID, and maybe he can't even if he does. And they're not as good, John. I mean, I know that this is me being the master of the obvious. Luka Doncic is a generational talent. He may look like he belongs in a bowling league, but so does the guy in Denver. It doesn't really matter. You have to have him on your team and build around him. And if you're not going to, if you're going to build around Anthony Davis, Anthony and Kyrie is I think a pretty good team. It is not a championship team.
I think it's a good team. I think that quite obviously, not to state the obvious, but I will, you just lost a ton of shot creation, of offense, right? So now all of a sudden you look around and you go, all right, well, I mean, I guess we're going to ask Spencer Dinwiddie to do some more of it. And I don't think the Mavs might be done here. I think the Mavs have to look around and figure out some more playmaking. You need to figure out where you're going to get more offense because you just lost a ton of it. I do like the pairing of Kyrie and Anthony Davis, but as the championship odds decreased here, I think everybody else went and looked. You made your team not as good.
I mean, look, it's I like the pairing with the homecoming queen, but if the option is Scarlett Johansson instead, I'm taking Scarlett Johansson. I mean, the pairing is great if it wasn't compared to Luka Doncic. I mean, that and it just brings us back to why are you giving away Luka Doncic for this? With all respect to Anthony Davis.
Yeah, it's a weird fit too. So Anthony Davis, who has said multiple times, when this trade went down, I quoted the Nico Harris thing on Blue Sky and was like, Anthony Davis just told us as recently as a week ago he doesn't want to play center. And
oh my God, it's so funny.
My reaction was just taking Nico at face value, going, we like Anthony Davis as a center. A bunch of Mavs fans went, no. They've also got Lively and Gafford. This means that AD can play the 4 like he wants to. Well, okay. Couple of things about that. Number one, AD hasn't been a volume 3-point shooter, and he's not a very good 3-point shooter either. So do you really want to play? I think his best position is center, even though he doesn't want to play it. Put that aside for a second.
It is,
Lively's,
but
he wants to play what he wants to play. So now you've got 3 bigs. Lively is hurt. You still have Gafford, and oh, by the way, there's PJ Washington. You just got 2 of those guys last year at the trade deadline when you gave up first-round picks for Gafford and PJ Washington. Are you now trading Gafford and or PJ Washington? Are you moving on from Lively, who's on a rookie deal and who's a really useful piece, but he's injured? What are you doing with your front court there? It's a really clunky fit.
Let me also throw in, and I've never been accused of being a part of the Kyrie Irving fan club, but I feel like Kyrie and I have made some strides, and I think we were working together, John. I can't remember when I went to New York and sort of met with some of his people after a column I wrote to just have a conversation about, hey, it was respectful. Let's have a polite conversation about how we disagree. So I'm not anti-Kyrie, but he's not exactly a forever guy at the teams that he's played at. Are we convinced that Kyrie Irving's going to want to be there in 2 weeks or 2 months or 7 months?
He's got a lot of leverage now, doesn't he?
He does.
Look, I think if you're Kyrie and you see Luka leave, from a basketball perspective, you're like, I'm not probably crazy about that. But from a contract me and my money perspective,
right,
pay up.
So to your question, what you do with those guys, it depends on, you have to sort of be confident, that Kyrie wants to be there. So you're building around, if you're building around Kyrie and AD, you're building on what is that, John? A 2 or 3 year timeline? It's not this year, unless you pull off some crazy move. It's not 5 years. You got to figure this thing out right quick because it's not going to work this year.
It's not going to work this year, but it has to work for sure next year. You have to be top 4 next year. And you have to be a Western Conference contender because if you're not, what are you doing?
You're so right. I'm just, again, you and I are being forced to sound like the masters of the obvious, like the sort of pedantic here, but that's just because of what Nico did. You just made the finals. That's the standard, dudes. I mean,
they went to the finals with Luka, where, by the way, for all the hemming and hawing, for the people who are trying to be Nico and Mavs apologists here, who are like, Luka didn't play great defense in the finals last year. You're right, he didn't. Guess what? Luka Doncic took that team that they assembled on the fly at the trade deadline last year, went through the Western Conference that was loaded last year, just like it is this year, made it to the finals against a generational offensive and defensive juggernaut in the Boston Celtics. I mean, look, what else are you asking from this dude?
Can I also give you another sort of dire sort of thread I want to pull on this?
Nah, that's enough.
Right, you're out of here. That's why I think it was Luka, and I don't know, but I mean, people told me that's the case, but I'm not sure. Kyrie has so much leverage now, right? I mean, Kyrie is going to be 33 in I think 5 or 6 weeks.
Get that big 5-year contract.
Diminutive point guards, if I could say that word, but I can't even think or speak. Smaller point guard, like the way that he plays is amazing. He's amazing, but he's not going to be able to play till he's 40, right? At the level that is important. And it's amazing. He's still really good,
and he hasn't been super durable either. Neither has AD.
No. Even when he's young. So if they give him all the money in the 5 years, that is going to be an albatross that's going to haunt them in a year or 2 or 3. So it not only is it you lose Luka, you might force yourself in a position to make a mistake on a Kyrie Irving contract without the actual ability to win in the short term and the certainty that you're screwed in the long term.
It's really bewildering. From the other side, from the Lakers side, no brainer. Thank you very much, Dallas Mavericks. We really appreciate this. We're super excited. We're the Lakers again, and a bunch of people are going to want to come here. And we were hemming and hawing and like really nervous about the future. And now the future's locked in, and it's amazing. So again, the odds here changed dramatically. Before this trade went down, they were plus 4,000 to win the finals, plus 2,500 to win the Western Conference. Afterwards, plus 1,600 to win the finals, plus 850 plus 850 to win the Western Conference. Bill, this was also a Lakers team on the night of the trade last night. They beat the Knicks in New York. They've been playing pretty good basketball.
That's the crazy thing. Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're like, we'll take Luka. We'll take Luka. That sounds good. They're like, now I know you've been really skeptical about the Lakers. You got to be in a little bit now. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I owe them like a million apologies because can I give you what I think is the most interesting? I'm writing about this for tomorrow, so it's on the brain. Can I give you what I think is the most interesting unanswered question about this? Can I just
please
bear with me for a second? As Kendrick Lamar would say, like, let me, just bear with me here on Atlanta. Here's the thing. Look, and we'll get into this in a little bit if you want to. LeBron is obviously saying, and his people are using their media people, which is great, to say had nothing to do with it, didn't know, told David McMenamin from ESPN, found out at dinner. Okay. One of two things are true, and I think it's really instructive to what's going to happen next. One of the things is LeBron James is lying. I don't know. The other thing is that LeBron's telling the truth, that he had nothing to do with it, didn't know, Rich Paul didn't know. I'm incredulous, but okay, I don't know. If that's true, John, that's a big F you to LeBron James. And the answer to that, I think, is the question of if LeBron signed off on this, if he knew, which would be my suspicion, but I don't know, then the plan is a LeBron-Luka tandem for however long LeBron thinks, because he's got this year and he's got a no trade clause and he's got a player option next summer 26. And in that world where LeBron signed off and this is he's pulling the strings like he always does, I think there's more moves that are coming. They've got to get a big man this year as part of the championship window. And maybe you sacrifice a little bit of the future because you're not worrying about Luka's co-star until LeBron retires, right? That's scenario one. If LeBron is telling the truth and he really didn't know, and beyond that,
I thought about this too.
The Lakers actually were like, you're going to find out when everyone else does. That's how little we respect you. Even though we just hired your buddy to be the coach, and I know you like JJ Redick, but they did, and we drafted your, I'm sorry, but not qualified son, and Bronny's assumes like a super sweet kid with a second-round pick, but you're used to having influence, but now it's gone. That is the Lakers telling LeBron, this is Luka's team now. It's Luka's Lakers, not LeBron's. And so in that case, whatever they do with LeBron, or he has a no-trade clause, he's got a year and a half, they're obviously planning to build around Luka starting whenever LeBron is out. And if LeBron's like, get me out of here, they'll get. So I think what's interesting is if LeBron out there, saying I didn't know. It's interesting from a People magazine, he yelled at me kind of perspective. But I think more importantly, it will tell us, and we don't know yet, are the Lakers planning to do Luka LeBron for however long LeBron wants to play? Because that's one plan for the next 6 days in the next 2 years. Or are they basically over LeBron and it's Luka's world, and in which case they can be a little more long-term in how they build around Luka Doncic?
I don't know about the message sending, but it just kind of happens organically, right? Like I think if you're the Lakers, that is a component that I was considering as well. Forget about if you knew or if you didn't know or whatever, the moment that you move Luka onto that team, it stops really functionally being LeBron's team.
If you don't tell him,
a huge component. Well, yeah,
He's
I mean,
so sensitive.
yeah, but
dude,
just but by default, I'm saying like whether they told him or not told him, or he's sensitive or he isn't sensitive, just by going and acquiring Luka Doncic, it's his team now. It's his team because of like the age range and the whole bit. Like
but I think it's a different. I'm sorry, I agree with you. I just think it's a totally different dynamic than if LeBron embraced and encouraged that or woke up, and I'm going to swear again like it is. It's like, what the fuck is this? Because if LeBron has the maturity at 40 to say, I need Luka, and I know this is going to mean the shine goes to him, but it gives me a shot at a championship, it's totally different than LeBron being surprised. If LeBron has been surprised, he's going to be so put out. I just think I want to know which it is, because I think it's going to be a vastly different experience for Luka and LeBron, however long they're together, based on whether LeBron was a part of this or got surprised.
It's going to be a fascinating dynamic, but for sure, Luka gains a lot of agency here, and LeBron maybe slightly diminished, even though he's having a good season. And I think they'll play really well together. And ultimately, LeBron having a shot now to do something in the Western Conference is going to probably like soothe any potential wounds there. It's interesting though. Producer Aaron pointed this out, that there has been some reporting out there, little whispers, some rumors about the Lakers maybe being frustrated with Anthony Davis giving that sit down to Shams, because last week where he said, I don't want to play center. I kept referencing that, AD had said that. He said that a zillion times in his career, but he gave a sit down to Shams and he was like, we need another big. So maybe that was a little frustration for the Lakers. I'm bringing up the frustration component because you were on CBS Sports HQ yesterday with our guy, Joe Musso. And on it, you referenced a report that you get from last year, where you said that the Lakers last year were a little frustrated with the whole Anthony Davis situation, or the LeBron was a little frustrated with the Anthony Davis situation. Now, CBS Sports social media put this out there into the world, and they took out the word little, and they did not give the context of last year. So all of a sudden, this thing explodes up to and including one LeBron James tweeting directly at you that you are an effing lie, which congratulations, Bill Ryder, NBA insider for CBS Sports. Would you like to respond to one LeBron James about this?
Sure. And there's also a column coming tomorrow that has a bit of a response in there too at CBSSports.com. So, okay, for those watching that don't know, I covered LeBron James his first 2 years when I lived in Miami. Really covered him his first year in Miami. And I was a columnist, and I was a pretty aggressive young columnist. I
don't believe it.
And went at him a lot. And he didn't like me. That's fine. And when LeBron tried, I'm just gonna give this quick history lesson. And when LeBron tried to basically start flipping reporters, one of his guys reached out to me, and I'm like, LeBron, you guys hate me. And he did say, like, look, we don't like what you wrote, but in reading through it, because he got a pretty sophisticated operation after that first year, he's like, look, the stuff you wrote was journalistically sound, even though we don't agree with the conclusions. We think there's a middle ground here. And it led, John, to eventually me sort of getting to know the people around him. And I worked at Fox Sports at the time. When Fox Sports 1 launched, that network I used to work at, it launched a part with me doing a sit-down interview with LeBron James. And we sort of made peace, and we're in a pretty good spot. It was kind of a shocker because he really didn't like me in Miami. But we've known each other a really long time. And in fact, the last time he tweeted about me was after that interview where he's basically, Bill used to be a critic, but it's all good. We're boys now. Or something. You can go look it up. It's something like that. So I've been covering LeBron forever. I am used to him kind of getting mad about stuff I write and hearing from people. I have never seen a reaction like this, obviously, John, in my life. And I'm not just somebody that's out. I know him. I know the people around him. So I don't really know how to respond other than the reporting is accurate, that he was a little frustrated with Anthony Davis. I understand where maybe he didn't. Honestly, John, I'm not even that mad at LeBron. Like, he probably read the headline. I'm assuming he didn't click on how long was it, John? 1 or 2 minute video, I think. Does that sound right? The video was beneath the tweet?
That's exactly right. So the thing here is social media is not given to context, to nuance, to gray areas. What happens anytime somebody sees a headline and doesn't decide to read the piece, or in this case, somebody sees a tweet but doesn't actually watch the full video. So he saw the headline on the tweet and he goes, that's not true. When you qualified it with a little frustrated, and it was last year. But it's hard to get context through all this. So that's why this whole thing blew up. But it did make me laugh, because Awful Announcing did a really good, thoughtful piece.
They did do a good job, I thought.
Breaking it down and being like, hey, listen, we understand why LeBron was upset, but what actually happened was, and then they outlined the context and the nuance. And you're not going to get that from 250 characters on Twitter.
Right. No, that's right. Let me also see. Here's the other thing. Like LeBron's sensitivity is obviously. I understand. Like if you look at the tweet, it said, I can understand where if you're not. I'm a journalist, right? You're a journalist. Context matters. I know people roll their eyes. Too bad. I'm not. John, you know this. I only tweet twice a day. Usually I tweet. I'm on the radio. I'm on John Gonzalez. I don't like social media. I'm not really out there like trying to build my following. But obviously this hit a sensitivity. Either he feels like people are lying about his role in this, and I didn't, but I could see where he misunderstood, or else, John, or else, to quote Big Million, the lady does protest too much, right? Or else there's a sensitivity here because if LeBron James actually was and again, I don't know, but if you made me guess, I would be pretty incredulous that the Lakers include LeBron James in the decision-making based on everything that you sort of know about LeBron. And if that's the case, the chance to get Luka Doncic is amazing. You noted the odds went from 40-1 to 16-1 to be champions this year, but it comes with a real big effing problem. And that is, my agent, who I put in this job and has been my friend for a long time, Rich Paul, is also AD's agent. How do I make sure I don't get the blame for being cutthroat? It's a cutthroat move. I respect cutthroat moves, but LeBron is sensitive. And there is reporting out there. I know it's a mix, John, but to suggest LeBron knew about it, that he knew in advance. I'm not reporting this, but can I read you something Chris Haynes said today, who's outstanding?
Yes, he is.
He had a video they put out. The main sort of headline from this was LeBron is going to be a Laker after the trade deadline, right? That was the main thing. But something else that he said that I thought was really interesting, and if you don't know, I mean, you all are watching an NBA emergency pod, you know who Chris Haynes is, but if you don't, he's amazing and really credible and great. He said that the Lakers were appreciative that Paul and LeBron, quote, made the process a seamless process, and the Lakers appreciated them for their efforts in helping the whole thing come together in the way that it did. At the risk of stating the obvious, how can you help the whole thing come together in the way that it did and be thankful for it if you didn't know about it? I'm not the one who's reporting LeBron knew about it. Chris Haynes is. What I was simply saying was, and I guess I'll close it here, and I was incredulous on CBS Sports HQ that LeBron wouldn't be involved. I'm still incredulous. And my point was, maybe he didn't, but here's some information we should remember. They drafted Bronny. They hired J.J. Redick. LeBron is, for me, not necessarily for you, but like the greatest of all time or the second greatest. That carries sway. The Lakers, from Dr. Bust to Genie, who I think the world of Genie, have a history of really bending to and sort of treating extremely well all-time greats, even at the end of their career. See Kobe's last contract in his last 2 years, and LeBron has pulled strings there. So and my point was, a year and a half ago, LeBron was a little frustrated with AD, and everybody knew this. So my point to LeBron, if you're watching, big guy, what's up? Been a minute, since last night. Is I was simply adding that piece of, I think, important context, not as aha, gotcha. If I knew, I would say it, but just this certainly seems like another clue that makes it hard for me to immediately believe that LeBron James was at dinner with his family, and he went, "Oh my goodness, what a surprise!" Shams has tweeted this. I did not know this was coming. That's it.
I don't know. My suspicion is the same as yours, that they probably run it by LeBron, and Chris Haynes is absolutely excellent. So yes, and if you're going to make it a seamless process, then you have to know about it in the first part. But so I'm glad that you guys could, you could explain the context to LeBron so that he won't tweet angry things at you in the future. I want to talk about the actual basketball component here, because Chris Haynes says that LeBron's going to be a Laker after the trade deadline. I think we all figured that out, but that's good to know. The thing here is Rob Pelinka was given a gift. Nico Harrison called him up and gave him a gift. I don't think that this took a particularly skilled general manager to go, I'm going to answer the phone. Oh my God. Yes. Thank you very much. Do you want us to file the paperwork, or will you? Okay. Going into the trade deadline, this is where Rob actually has some work to do. Now, fortunately for him, again, he was given a gift because he didn't give up both of the first-round picks. They still have their 2031 first that they can trade. They still have pick swaps available in 2026, 2028, and 2030 available. They still have Austin Reaves and Dalton Connect if they wanted to move them. Now might be the time, Bill, especially with Luka, to trade Austin Reaves. He's making $12.9 million this season, $13.9 million next season. He's got a player option after that. This might be the high water mark for Austin Reaves, where people look around and go, yeah, we could use an Austin Reaves on a really good contract going forward. My question is, I think like with Austin Reaves, he might be a redundancy that you could get off of here, and you need some bigs. So where do we think that the Lakers go ahead of the deadline?
Okay, so I know I've already hit this. I just don't know. I am not convinced that that's their path. I really just want to know if their plan is LeBron for the next, I don't know how long LeBron thinks he can play or can play at a high level, but I don't think 2 or 3 years is crazy. I just don't think it is, even though he's 40. So if it's that, and again, I'll say it again, if LeBron knew about this, look, I'm not saying he pushed AD out the door. I'm not saying he didn't. I just don't know. But at a minimum, if they came to him at the last minute, and seems that would be a reasonable assumption, and he said, God, I love AD, but it's Luka. Fuck, all right, let's do it, even though he's saying he didn't, then you're right. Then you have to go find a big, and maybe you have a window to win a championship in the next 3 years. But I'll just say it again, John, if it's not that, if it's Luka Doncic is the thing and LeBron can deal with it like he wants, and it's an unknown of how LeBron's going to respond, I don't know if I would make a lot of trades, including in particular Austin Reaves for now, because if LeBron's put out, I'm not sure you're going to win that much anyway. And I think it just depends what Pelinka's timeline is, because you might think the most salient point of all, and there's a lot to pull from here. Nico Harrison just gave Rob Pelinka the contract to be the general manager of the Los Angeles Lakers, however long Luka Doncic wants to be here. And in 6 years, when that 2031 draft pick is up, Luka's going to be 31. I mean, they're going to be able to build around Luka forever. And so I don't know, but to have the conversation about if it's win now time with LeBron, and it might be, but I think LeBron has to have been in on this. I don't know, man. You need a big.
I think so too. I could see it both ways. You're right about them having flexibility for the future now, because you have a longer runway now that you have Luka lined up for however many years he's going to be a Los Angeles Laker. However, it changes the dynamics in the West. You and I have discussed on this show a lot that Oklahoma City is the best team in the Western Conference and the best team in the NBA. And then after that, there's the second tier in the Western Conference of 2, 3, and 4, the Grizzlies, the Rockets, and the Nuggets. I think that that's right. Now I'm looking at it and going, maybe the Lakers are in that second tier, and wouldn't you want to maximize and at least have a crack at it? Because look, LeBron James at 40 years old is still amazing. He had a fantastic game in New York the other night. By the way, they won against the Knicks, who were fully healthy, had all 5 of their main starters out there. I'm saying that fully healthy, even though Cat's 2 hands don't work. And last time I checked, you need 2 hands or at least one functional hand to play basketball. But still, their 5 starters were out there. He had no Anthony Davis in that game. Max Christie had a nice game. A sayonara Max Christie, by the way. But LeBron James was really old school LeBron James in that game. So now if you get Luka back healthy, and that's an if, right? Because you've got the calf injury. But if I'm Rob and I'm LeBron, hey, we're in the mix now in the Western Conference. Let's strike while we can.
And I'll add to that too, just a small point. The big issue for LeBron is whether or not, despite his numbers and his bouts of utter excellence, whether there's too much wear and tear. And some people who think that that's already happening will point to his sort of box score plus minus when he's on versus off for the Lakers, right? Like there are some, if you want to get into the numbers a little bit, having Luka's such a high usage guy and I know that LeBron and Dwayne Wade had this sort of issue, but that's a different era, different time, that it takes so much of the ball handling. Like LeBron doesn't have to be it doesn't have to generate the offense when things sort of stall and go bad. He doesn't have to rise to the rescue. Point LeBron doesn't have to be a thing if they feel like that's a wear and tear issue. And so to your point, is there sort of like, I think, increase the opportunity that maybe you can get more out of LeBron for less because Luka can take up some of that baggage? And the answer is, I don't know. You got to go get a center. And honestly, my brain is so fried. I haven't thought about it at all. But who's playing center? I know Anthony Davis doesn't want to play center. Too bad. Like that was what you were going to be doing here.
Yeah, you're looking at right now. You're looking at Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood and Koloko
and Jackson Hayes and Jackson Hayes. Yeah. And he hasn't looked great when he's that's not encouraging.
But I mean, you know what? When you have LeBron and Luka, you can paper over a lot. And I'm really excited to see this.
I agree.
I want to thank everybody again who is joining us on YouTube. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe. And again, the bell symbol, you click on that, you'll get notified when we have special shows like this and when we go live. And we'll have some live shows this week as well. I'm sure there'll be more trades when, say, for example, Jimmy Butler gets traded. So that was supposed to be the
How does this get pushed down? What a crazy 24 hours.
The Jimmy Butler thing. Yeah. So we've been waiting for Jimmy Butler to get moved. And there had been, some talk about maybe Jimmy Butler is willing to go to some different destinations. Maybe the Heat are willing to come off their price point because they want to get Jimmy Butler onto an airplane and away from their team as quickly as possible. There's been a little bit of smoke that reports that Jimmy Butler was maybe considering the Golden State Warriors. And then there's some reports about maybe the Warriors aren't as thrilled and we're not sure about the fit and the culture here. Well, Brian Windhorst over at ESPN reported earlier tonight that Jimmy and Golden State Warriors conversations have broken down because Jimmy is evidently reportedly unwilling to sign an extension with the Warriors. This feels like a little bit of, I'm going to break up with you before you break up with me, Bill.
You know what you think it is?
Why wouldn't Jimmy want to sign an extension with the Warriors?
I will say this. I know Brian really well. I went to Brian's wedding and we worked together on the Heat beat. And so everybody gets manipulated.
I believe Wendy's reporting.
Right. And obviously, like LeBron covered LeBron, Jesus Christ, Bill. Excuse me. Wendy covered the Heat. His sources could certainly be with the Warriors
and the Cavs.
I thought and the Cavs. But like in terms of like this trade, it's certainly reasonable to think he's getting his information from the Heat, or is he at least able to vet it with the Heat because he covered them and they respect the hell out of him. I took it at face value. That's really interesting. Your view. My sort of view was there has been in my conversations with people in the Heat organization and people around the NBA, but really people with the Heat who would know more, this sort of sense of dread, this sort of feeling that I'd gotten, and they hadn't said this, but my sort of perspective that Jimmy might be a little irrational or so stubborn on Phoenix. Like we know that Bradley Beal has to, with his no trade clause, only he and LeBron have one, agree to move. But like the way some of the conversations with sources, there was a weariness, or not panic, but just a leeriness. Like usually when you're talking to guys like, we're going to move him eventually and, whatever, blah, blah, blah. This to me reflects maybe Jimmy just doesn't understand or thinks he's going to play chicken and not swerve like that stupid scene in Greece. I don't understand this is the answer. It doesn't make sense.
Smash cut to Jimmy Butler leading the Heat into whatever postseason appearance that they have. Where like both sides, the Heat and Jimmy, like wake up on Thursday afternoon at like 6 p.m. Eastern or whatever, and they're like, "Oh no, we're still married." Like I had your stuff packed up and I put it on the lawn. I guess you can move back in. I don't know.
You're back? Question mark.
Yeah. I absolutely believe Wendy's reporting here. It's hard for me to fathom. Okay, if you could go to the Golden State Warriors and you can get an extension, what is unattractive about playing with Steph and Draymond in Golden State, where they have institutional knowledge and win championships and you can get paid? What's the problem?
So here's what I'm guessing, right? I don't know, but I have had conversations, obviously, with people about Jimmy over the last, God, it feels like 12 months, last few weeks, many weeks. Maybe, I'm speculating, maybe Jimmy is so hell-bent on Phoenix that he's pulling out of the war. Like, if you're Jimmy Butler, right, and you're his agent, you've talked, according to Winters, you've talked terms, and then for now, I think the report was the Warriors have pulled out because Jimmy won't sign it. But now Jimmy knows what the terms would be. Maybe he's trying to like see if he can squeeze enough pressure on the Heat to lower the price enough that the Suns really put pressure on Beal, and that if Beal doesn't agree to leave and Jimmy can't be his son, maybe he feels like, I'm just speculating, in a position for his agent to go back to the Warriors in the last 24, 12 hours, whatever, and say, okay, let's pick this back up. He'll sign the extension. Because otherwise, I don't know. This feels to me like Jimmy is still playing power politics with Pat Riley. And maybe he's still trying to get the Suns if he can, and he'll come back to this.
It could be, yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot of right now. It's Sunday night, right? I mean, there's a lot of time. A lot of things can happen between now and Thursday afternoon. I wanted to say this might be a little bit meta, but I want to dig into it just before we wrap up the show.
I love that.
How crazy is it that, like, they're all season long. There's been the inside the NBA crew and some other people who are going like the product isn't any good. And we don't like threes and the ratings are down. This Jimmy Butler thing, we're just now getting to it at the end of the show. The last 24 hours reminds everybody you can't measure the conversation on Twitter and Blue Sky and social media that happens around the NBA on nights like this and last night where like it just sucks all the oxygen out of the room. There's no Nielsen ratings for, oh my God, did you see what the NBA did again?
On that note, tomorrow is obviously the start of Super Bowl week, and those of us in the media know that a lot of our colleagues go to now New Orleans for Radio Row. And I was joking with a colleague of mine today in one of my brief moments of not working. All of those folks who are focused on football are going to wake up I have a radio show, so I like fellow radio hosts like, oh crap, I got to talk NBA today. NBA is going to steal tomorrow, I think, right? Like
at least part of it. I think that tomorrow we're going to wake up and everybody's going to go, oh, it's Super Bowl week, and it's going to start dominating.
You don't think they're going to be like LeBron? And I don't know if no one
I don't think it's going away. Normally we talked about this the other day where we were like, why wasn't trade deadline week last week? It should have been last week while the NFL was dark, while they had their off day, right? But now if all of a sudden, like, tomorrow, when normally the NBA would have got pushed aside, they're at least going to be part of the conversation because this was such a nuts weekend, which was my whole point here. The NBA is really good at the drama, at the extracurricular stuff, at the gossip,
it's so much fun.
Trades, like this is where it really shines. So for everybody who was pronouncing the death of the NBA, a little too soon, I think. I think that's going to do it for us tonight because Bill needs to sleep eventually. We will, as I've mentioned, or maybe not. Maybe something else happens. There'll be another trade.
I got more.
We're going to have to hop on here.
Right. That'd be funny.
For sure. Bill and I will be back on Tuesday night following Celtics and Cavs. Those two teams are going to play on Tuesday night. Should be a really fun game. But also, as these trade deadline is until Thursday, we're going to have a special trade deadline show after the deadline on Thursday. But this week, as these big trades start to happen, if Jimmy Butler gets moved, anything else of significance happens, Bill and I will be back here. So be sure to click that bell symbol on YouTube and you'll get notified when we go live. And then also please subscribe and leave a comment and like the button and all that stuff. But for now, for our very tired, fatigued, embattled NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I am John Gonzalez. We thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back probably pretty soon here, gang.